Hey guys, what's up and welcome to this evening's live Q&A. Of course, as you guys know, we go live on every Friday to get all of the questions of the week answered in one session. Now, I have a lot of questions to answer tonight. So tonight is going to be almost like a bit more of a rapid fire type thing. Plus I'm on a time limit. I actually only have, 45 minutes before my dinner's going to be done. So I'm going to try and get all of these questions answered as quickly and as concisely as I can. I'll try not to get pulled off on too many tangents like I like to sometimes, because quite often there are a lot of nuances that are also very important to ensuring that you're able to kind of actually follow through and take action with the answer that I give. But I'll do my best tonight to keep things short and sweet, but also very effective for you. And of course, if there's anything where I answer it and you feel like I need a bit more detail than that, Ty, before I can move forward and take action, of course, let me know in the comments below and I will do a follow-up video with a more in-depth response to whatever that question is that I'm covering. So without further ado, I'm losing my ability to speak already. Maybe this isn't the best time to do a live Q&A if I can't even get my introduction out the way. So let's get into our first question anyway, so as not to keep you guys here for too long. So my first question, so I've had some come in on the DM, some in the comment sections of my videos throughout the week and so on. And of course, just as we have the last few weeks, John has been helping us by dumping in all of the questions that he has, which is awesome because it gives me lots of material to talk about. And of course, it's probably likely that many of you guys have the same or very similar type questions as well. Because quite often in my videos, I'll have a particular point or topic or thing that I'm talking about. And of course, often that will trigger questions that are related to it, but not necessarily specific to the thing I'm talking about. So you get to the end of the video, it's like, cool, Ty, thanks for that piece of info. I can move forward with that. But now I have this, that, and the other question. How do I get those answered? And John is very good at, based on a video that I'll do, he gets lots of questions come up and he will just dump them all in the comment section, which is awesome. So feel free to do that for yourselves, guys. And of course, when we come to these live sessions, I will get all of those questions answered. So anyway, question number 1. What is the best way for quick fat loss? That's a bit annoying that I've actually started with this one because really there's not a short answer, but I will keep it short. But the first thing I will ask is, why would you want quick fat loss? You may have heard me say this before, but the catch is for many people, when you aim for quick fat loss, it assumes that you're not really committed to changing. It's just like you want this quick result and you want to get to the fat loss and you hope that everything will be wonderful and life will be happy now and you'll be amazed with your body and confidence through the roof and all the rest of it. But quite often that's not the case. We have to be willing to transform as we go through our transformation rather than get there with the same mindset that created the problem in the first place. So I would recommend that you don't aim for quick weight loss. And that's not to say it won't happen quickly, but I don't recommend that that's your target. I recommend instead that your target is sustainable and consistent weight loss, which can often occur very quickly. But if we're talking strategies, it comes back down to my metabolic matrix, of course, but the key aspects of that, which I would suggest. So obviously we've got metabolic meals, metabolic movement, metabolic melatonin, and metabolic mindset. But if we're talking just like, well, what are the quick things that I can just get started? When it comes to meals, focus on getting good quality protein and high quality fat. So that's the 2 things to focus on with your meals. Of course, yeah, reduce the junk and all this and that, but focus on getting in enough nutrition, and often that will significantly reduce your cravings for the junk. And also where you're getting in these additional high quality nutrient dense calories that will prevent you from craving the other stuff and leave less room for it. Okay, so because you're going to just be generally fuller and stay fuller for longer, you'll be more satiated. So that's the first thing. High quality proteins and good healthy fats to focus on for your metabolic meals. With metabolic movement, focus on trying to get stronger. So we want to have I would say a minimum of 2, but ideally 3 or 4 workouts or strength workouts that you're doing each week. So you're working out in the gym, and the goal of that session is to get stronger in some way. You're trying to stimulate your muscle and your body and system enough to encourage it to get stronger. Then when it comes to our metabolic melatonin, this is rest and recovery, I would say you would want to focus on extending your sleep. So if you know you're getting less than 7 hours sleep, which many of us busy men are, I would recommend trying to get minimum of 7 hours or more. Ideally around that 8 tends to work best for most people. And then in terms of the metabolic mindset, what I recommend you do is focus on taking what we call ruthless responsibility of self. It's literally the foundation of the mindset aspect of my system. And in order to do that, we have to first get honest with ourselves. We have to be in complete integrity with self about where we are, where we want to go, and how we're going to get there. So in simple terms, just to clarify this, the best way for quick fat loss is to focus on getting high quality fats and proteins, focus on getting stronger, focus on getting more sleep, and make sure that you stay responsible for ensuring that you do these things. So it's self-accountability, discipline, and all the rest of it. Don't rely on motivation. Rely on yourself to make you do the thing you know you need to do in order to get the result that you want. So just implementing those 3 things and having the right mindset towards those 3 things is going to be the best way for you to get quick fat loss, but also sustainable fat loss. Cool. So I hope that helps. Then our next question was, what's the best type of cardio for losing weight? So if we're talking just like without considering any other training that you might be doing, it's just, oh, well, I'm going to implement cardio into my workouts as well. What's the best type I should use? Generally, the most effective type is things like circuit training, kettlebell training. So they're very good for stimulating the cardiovascular system, but using a style of resistance-based training. That tends to be very effective, particularly for long-term results. And what I mean is consistent results over a long period of time. When it comes to just strictly cardio, for example, going for a run, getting on a bike, getting on the rower, that sort of thing, then I would recommend you do a mixture of long, steady duration stuff and high intensity interval training. And I would alternate your sessions. So the long, steady duration stuff could be anywhere between 30 and 90 minutes, depending on your current fitness level and how much you're trying to push yourself and so on. So that would be the long, steady duration stuff. Oh, I went for a 30-minute run. I went for a 60-minute bike ride, or whatever that might be. And then the high intensity interval training could be anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes. Again, using the same equipment if you wanted. The only difference is rather than just maintaining the same pace or intensity for a given period of time, instead you're going to vary it, and you'll mix it up between periods of time where you're doing steady, fairly moderate paced activity, say for about 45 seconds, and then a 15-second sprint, 45 seconds steady to moderate pace, and then 15-second sprint, and so on. And that sprint is obviously regardless of the piece of equipment or activity that you're doing. You could be skipping, you could be on a rower, you could be doing the cross trainer, or actually running or whatever. So I would mix up the cardio. A good combination of the two is always good, because different types of cardio create different types of stimulus and adaptation within the body. So for example, if we're talking in terms of just general heart health, not just the fat loss, the long, steady duration stuff will help to increase the size of your left ventricle, which means that obviously with each heartbeat, you're actually going to pump a higher volume of blood around the system. And then the high intensity work actually strengthens and increases the thickness of the heart wall, which means we actually get a stronger contraction within the heart. So again, helping to improve circulation overall. And the fitter, healthier, and more adaptive our cardiovascular system is, the more intense the type of training we can do, the more we can get away with moments or periods of time where we need to sacrifice certain aspects of our diet or our sleep and recovery and so on. So all of those things in the whole will then help with your weight loss. So best type of cardio for weight loss is to mix it up. Then where's our next question? Are deep squats bad for your knees? So this one really, it's a question I'd like to answer with a separate video. I will give you a quick overview, But I will also at some point in the next couple of weeks do a separate video demonstrating the different types of squat, how and why you might do it like this way or that way and so on. But are they bad for your knees? In a nutshell, no. No particular exercise is bad for you. Instead, it's what you bring to the table that determines whether any given exercise is going to be good or bad for you when you come to executing on it. So, for example, squatting deep, if you have good mobility, good stability, and adequate strength to overcome the load that you're using, then there is absolutely no harm in doing deep squats and no reason why you shouldn't do deep squats. If, however, let's say I have really limited range of motion in my ankles, so therefore, as I drop down into the squat, my knees can only travel so far forward, which means my hips now get pushed backwards. So as I cross parallel, it now rounds out my lower back. Well, now deep squatting is bad for you. But that's not because deep squatting is bad. It's because you don't have what we call the orthopedic profile to complete that movement safely. Because as you drop down into the movement, it's compromising your posture, which if it's just body weight, probably not that big a deal. But if we're talking loaded, maybe a barbell back squat or barbell front squats and so on, if you're now having to round out your lower back under load, that's when we put ourselves at risk of injury. And obviously puts the back at injury. Now, when it comes to your knees, as the question asks, are they bad for your knees? Well, no, they're not. And in fact, for most people, staying above parallel is more dangerous. And the reason for that is the majority of the movement above the knee is predominantly controlled through quadriceps recruitment. So as in the quads, the front of your thighs. But as you drop down and hit parallel and cross the parallel mark and obviously drop below, that encourages increased activation of the hamstring, which acts as what we call a dynamic cruciate ligament. So we have the ACL ligament, which obviously tries to stop forward shear of the knee and so on, but the hamstrings also help with that movement. Now, if you're staying above parallel and only strengthening the quads or predominantly strengthening the quads, then what we often end up with is a relative imbalance between the quadriceps and the hamstrings, which pulls the knee out of alignment or ideal balance. So we end up creating excessive shear force, excessive joint wear, etc., in the knees, because we're not actually using the full range of motion that's available to us, which therefore ensures that we're getting full activation and recruitment of all muscles involved. So by limiting range of motion, you actually limit strength development, you limit stability development, and that's what puts you at increased risk of injury, not necessarily doing a squat that is below parallel. Cool. So I hope that helps. Some of these questions are taking a little longer than I was planning, but it's okay. I will try to be quicker as we move forward. And of course, even though I've got a shorter session today, if you have any questions that crop up for you whilst we're on here, then feel free to post them in the comments and I will do my best to get them answered. So TV, how much is bad for you? So TV inherently, like, oh, here's a TV, sit and watch it, isn't necessarily bad for us. The problem for most of us is we spend too much time watching TV and we tend to watch it late at night. For most of us, because obviously we're at work all day and so on. And then we get home at night and we're tired as fuck and exhausted. So what we want to do is chill out, relax, unwind in front of the TV. So that's more of a problem than TV itself. The reason being is, one, most of us are relatively inactive all day at work. The seated workplace is the most predominant work environment in the world now. So most of us are too sedentary throughout the day anyway. Then we come home and sit in front of the TV. So of course, over time, this increases our risk or potential for becoming obese, ill, diseased, and so on. So that's the biggest problem with TV. Then we have the fact that many of us watch it late at night. And the issue there is it will potentially limit our ability to fully recover. The reason for that is the stimulation that we get from the blue light emitted. I keep looking over here. That's because that's where I have a TV in my office. So the blue light that is emitted from the screen tends to overstimulate the pineal gland as we're moving late into the evening. And because that blue light is coming out, your brain assumes that it's still daylight because it emits a very similar blue light to that which we get from the sun. So it keeps our stress hormones or our activating hormones high and prevents a good high production of melatonin as we move into the evening. which then, of course, or unfortunately, limits our potential to get good quality sleep once we go to bed. Many of us will go to bed and will crash out because we feel exhausted, but we don't actually get deep restorative sleep because the pineal gland, etc., is overstimulated still, and the body is still overstimulated from this excessive exposure to blue light late into the evening. So that is more of a problem with the TV than TVs themselves. Right, what's our next one? Shaving, good or bad? We wouldn't have shaved a long time ago. That's a good point, and a good question, because shaving, generally speaking, is not necessarily a bad thing for most people. But as you mentioned, we wouldn't have been able to shave a long time ago. This is very true. And if you're into spirituality and things like that, or if you studied any level of kind of quantum mechanics and how essentially everything is energy and so on. So in the human body, it's believed that the pineal gland is what enables us to have a deeper connection, or to connect to a higher consciousness. So the universe, God, source, whatever you want to call it. So the pineal gland is almost like the gateway to that. And it's believed that our hair essentially acts like an amplifier for that. It's almost like our own antenna. It helps amplify the ability for us to connect to that higher consciousness, which is why you would have seen in a lot of traditional cultures that many of the members would keep or maintain long hair, or if they would lose their hair, then they would have big beards, etc., because the hair is said to act as an amplifier for our ability to connect to source, essentially. So if you want to shave, not a big deal. And I'm sure that if you are spiritual enough and your energy is aligned correctly, you could still connect to this higher level of consciousness, etc., whether you have hair or not. It just may be easier for you if you have hair. I obviously don't have much at all. The Lord decided to take that away. But as they say, grass doesn't grow on a busy street, so I'm not complaining. Where are we next? Deodorants, good or bad? Both good and bad. Just depends on the deodorant that you buy. Now, in reality, from a health standpoint, not necessary. Sometimes from an odor standpoint, of course, necessary. But if it's an actual deodorant like an antiperspirant, I wouldn't recommend those, because obviously we're not supposed to deliberately block our pores and prevent our body and physiology from being able to carry out its normal natural processes. The other issue we tend to have with a lot of deodorants and things is they have a lot of heavy metals in them, such as aluminium and things like that, which again causes toxicity in the body. So again, wouldn't recommend them, but you can get better quality ones. I don't know if I have any in here in my office. But for example, you can get like rock salt roll-ons and rock salt sprays and things like that, which are very effective deodorizers. But they won't block up your pores, and they come with much less and almost zero toxicity compared to a lot of the commercially bought stuff that you may buy. So that's that on deodorants. Can you wash too much? Lol. Yes, you can. So what we have to remember is obviously we are a living organism, and we are a living organism of living organisms. So as in, like, from mouth to anus, we have billions of bacteria, and our skin should be covered in billions of bacteria as well. Now, in an ideal world, both through the gut, through the skin, etc., we would have an ideal balance, as in a predominant balance of good, healthy bacteria, or what we call symbiotic bacteria. Then we would have a small amount of the bad bacteria, because obviously it's unavoidable. So on average, we should see a ratio of around 85% good to about 15% bad. Now, the catch we have when we wash too much is we actually kill off and eliminate a lot of our good bacteria, which leaves an environment where bad bacteria can start to overtake and thrive and so on, because many of us expose ourselves to toxic environments, toxic chemicals, and we don't really nurture ourselves all that much. We don't spend much time out in nature or in contact with nature, which is where a lot of our bacterial shield comes from. So from that perspective, yes, you can wash too much. And And there's no harm in washing daily, but I wouldn't recommend, when I say washing daily, I'm doing this because you're washing daily, but I wouldn't recommend you use soaps daily. Again, unless they're a bit more natural. But be careful because a lot of soaps are alkalizing to the skin. And that's not to say you want acidic skin, but of course, we don't want it to be too alkalized because, again, that leaves an environment where pathogenic bacteria and stuff can start to take a hold. So yes, you want to wash, but you wouldn't necessarily want to use soap every single day. Just use water, warm water, have a warm shower and a cloth or a flannel or whatever. You don't need to be disinfected on a daily basis. Because unfortunately, you'll probably find that your skin is worse than it would be by doing so. And obviously, there's also the other issues with chemical toxicity, chemical load, etc. in the body that a lot of people are having problems with and have reduced health and vitality because of, but don't actually realize it's because of all the chemicals they're exposing themselves to. Cool. Right. Next question. Mobile phones, good or bad? Or can they make you ill? So mobile phones, in terms of a source of technology, you could argue they're good. They have obviously many pros and many cons. They make, for example, the running of my business much easier when I'm away from my office and things like that. On the flip side, you could argue they're bad because we're constantly being tracked, monitored, listened to, and all the rest of it. But like everything, pros and cons, you have to weigh up, well, am I willing to sacrifice this particular thing in order to have this other outcome? Now, I know, John, your question is really more about, well, is the radiation coming from the phone bad for you? In a nutshell, yes. Radiation is potentially bad for us, as in cell phone radiation and so on. But like most things, the healthier we can get, the more vital we are, basically, and the healthier our body is, the more adaptive our physiological capacity is, the less things like mobiles, Wi-Fi signals, and all the rest of it, the less it will have an effect on us. And for some, if you can raise your vibration level higher than that of the radiation from the phone or the Wi-Fi signal or whatever it might be, it will have zero negative effect on you at all. So that, of course, comes with making sure that you are very well taken care of mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually before you can kind of reach that level of consciousness whereby your external environment has zero to no negative impact on you. But let's say we're not there, then what do? Usual thing, always comes back to the metabolic matrix. We make sure we've got that metabolic mindset, so a strong positive mindset that helps us move forward. We've taken care of our metabolic meals, our metabolic movement, and our metabolic melatonin. That is the foundation that we need so that things like negative detrimental effects from mobile phone radiation have little to no effect on us. But if you know that you are affected by it, so some people, for example, like if they're on their phone, they'll find like their hand gets real hot because that's their cells essentially responding to it, and it's beginning to cause inflammation and things in the hand. So you can get things like Tesla plates and so on. So I have a Tesla plate here, which are said to help balance out those incoherent waves and signals that come from things like phones. But you can get ones that stick directly on the phone. You can get little stickers and tags now that are supposed to adjust and change those frequencies so they're more harmonious with the natural frequencies of the body and so on. So there are lots of things that we can now do to help negate some of the effect, but nothing will beat being fucking healthy. They all seem easier and like a quick hack and so on, but that's, again, why I always talk about ruthless responsibility of self. Nothing beats taking care of yourself. All these different hacks and things are just temporary fixes. It's like putting a plaster on a wound that needs stitching. It's like, it's not going to help. It will temporarily make you feel a bit better, but it won't actually address the cause of the problem. Because the truth is, the cause of the phone being bad is not necessarily the phone being bad. It's the fact that you don't have the capacity to adapt to it potentially. So focus on self first. Right. Where's the next one? Why do people get nail fungus? Oh, good question. So most people, sometimes on the simple surface level, sometimes people will get a fungus because they've had exposure to a pathogenic bacteria of some sort or fungus, and it's had an opportunity to thrive and grow. Oh, shit, we need to do something about it. The catch for most people, though, is it's not necessarily a one-off random exposure to something. It's a build-up over time. So, for example, fungus and things, whether in the skin, the nails, and so on, quite often started inside. It's because we have created an environment through our lifestyle, created an environment within us that has allowed bad bacteria, bad fungus, etc., to grow or to thrive in the human body. Now, we have to be mindful of the fact that fungus, etc., or fungus in particular, is this Mother Nature's garbage collector. So it's here to break us down and essentially decompose us. So it's showing us how our vitality is lacking. So that's not to say all fungus is bad, and all of us at any level of health will have bacteria, fungus, virus, and all the rest of it in or around the body. But they're supposed to be, and generally speaking, are symbiotic with us. Like, we live in this symbiotic relationship with bacteria, parasites, viruses, and so on. It's just when the bad ones get too much out of hand and start to take over, that's when we start to see or experience negative health effects. So nail fungus, you must ideally start taking care of yourself from the inside out. So that's good food, trying to eliminate all sugars where possible, as in, simple refined sugars and so on. So we'd go relatively high protein, high fat with complex carbohydrates, so fibrous carbs and stuff, less of the starchy stuff while we're trying to get rid of the fungus and bacteria. You want good, healthy exercise. So you're not necessarily overly straining yourself in the gym, but you're exposing yourself to a good level of exercise that's going to encourage positive change in the body. You're getting plenty of sleep and recovery. Again, look, Ty's talking about that metabolic matrix again, but that's because these are the essential components we need. And then you might want to address the nail fungus directly as well, as in topically, with something like, where is it? I don't have one in here, do I? Yes, I do. I must have. With something like this. I don't know if that will come into focus. So this is oregano oil. Very effective at helping with things like nail fungus and things like that. You'll have to use it over time, of course. That particular one is from a company called North American Herb and Spice. And it's very good for helping with things like nail fungus. In fact, they even have one specific for nail fungus called Nail It. But you could, if you didn't want to use that specific one, you could just use that one directly. Cool. Oh, and good hydration. Good hydration is another thing that you'll want to make sure is nailed down with that over time as well. Can you just eat protein? Yes, you can. That's the simple answer. Should you? Maybe for some. But that's an interesting question, because a lot of people obviously eat predominantly carbohydrate. And there's this idea, because of the food pyramid that used to be kind of the governmental recommendation for how we should all eat. The foundation of that food pyramid was grains, 6 to 11 servings of grains a day for the average person, which is absolutely fucking ridiculous. But I'll leave that for another video. The catch-22 is, it's like, oh, well, they've told you that, oh, grains should be the foundation of your diet, like assuming they're most important or something, not actually telling you that it just supports the grain industry. But what we have to consider is, if you were to eat a diet of just carbohydrate, you die. Whereas if you eat a diet of just proteins and fats, you will. So, sorry, let me get this, change what I was saying. So if I had a diet where I'm eating, where I eliminate, sorry, I was fucking getting confused with myself. So if I have a diet and I eliminate protein, I die. If I have a diet and over time I eliminate fats, I die. If I have a diet and I eliminate carbohydrates, I live. So from that standpoint, now I'm talking long period of time, of course, but from that standpoint, that shows us that proteins and fats are more important than carbohydrate. So we can live without carbohydrates, full stop, but we cannot live without proteins, and we cannot live without fats. So yes, you can eat just protein, but the average person probably wouldn't want to do that, even though, as I always say, generally speaking, as a foundational component of our diet, protein is most important because it's the second most abundant substance in the body. So yes, you can eat just protein, but probably not recommended. And I'm not saying eliminate carbohydrates either, because obviously just because we can get rid of them doesn't mean you necessarily should. You just have to be careful about controlling whether you have an abundance of them in your diet or not. And most people will find that if they are sick, tired, overweight, unhealthy, feel like shit, and so on, they probably have an abundance of carbohydrate in their diet. So yeah, just bear that in mind. If you are feeling shitty and you look at your diet, you'll probably find that it's heavily laden with carbohydrates on average. Right. Is there an alcoholic drink that is better than others? Maybe wine. So, yeah, in some respects, you could argue that for some people, wine is a better choice than, for example, beer. But that's only really because of the resveratrol. So alcohol, we have to remember, ultimately is a poison. The body has to detox it, obviously. And for the average person, long term, it's going to have negative long-term health effects. Now, yes, there are certain benefits that certain studies will show because of the resveratrol that's in wine, for example. But you have to remember that came from the grapes. So my argument would be, well, why not just eat the grapes? Now, if you're going to drink alcohol, no problem if you do. Just keep it in moderation for obvious reasons, because excessive consumption of it will likely make you overweight and will cause a lot of metabolic disruption, plus obviously all the issues with potential alcoholism and all the rest of it. But because alcohol has 7 calories per gram, because it's such a simple carbohydrate, it tends to be very easy to overconsume your daily calorie requirements, because obviously alcohol tends to go down so well. Whereas a standard carbohydrate, as in a carbohydrate food that nature provides, will have around 4 calories per gram. So with alcohol, you're getting almost double per gram. And of course, it goes down much easier. You tend to consume a lot more in a much shorter period of time. Blood sugar disruptions, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, you could argue wine is better. But for some people, and this again isn't me recommending you drink it, distilled alcohols tend to be better because there's less potential for intolerance and toxicity and so on because of the distillation process. So, for example, people who have issues with alcohols that contain gluten, often if you have a distilled alcohol, something like vodka, where it's basically being purified through that distillation process, it will have less of a digestive effect on you, as in a negative digestive effect through intolerance to gluten and all that sort of thing. So yeah, some alcohol is better, but it will all come down to how you handle it. For example, I have one client who is or has a tendency to lean on wine here and there. He sees through the tracking of his data on a Whoop app. So he uses that, which tracks his heart rate variability on a day-to-day basis and so on. If he has red wine, that has a much bigger detrimental effect on his sleep and recovery than white wine. Now, that's not to say that will be exactly the same for you. You may find it's the flip, but he knows for sure that red wine has a much more negative effect on his health, his fitness, his recovery than the white wine does. So yes, some is better than others, but it's more a bit like the exercise we were talking about earlier. It's more what you bring to the table. Right, next question. Cheese, is it okay or not? It's okay if you can tolerate it. So some people are dairy intolerant, some are lactose intolerant, some are not intolerant to it at all. But it will all depend on, again, what you bring to the table. So if you have cheese and it has no negative effect on you, then absolutely go ahead. But like anything, I would always recommend that you just buy the highest quality cheese that your budget will allow. Because a lot of dairy is poor quality. So where you can get the best quality, if you have a local farmer or farm shop or something that sells raw cheese, I would recommend that over pasteurized stuff. But yeah, cheese isn't a problem unless it's a problem for you as an individual. Oh, the one other thing I will mention is, although not as nice, generally speaking, for the average opinion, goat's cheese, sheep's cheese tends to be better for most people, as in it's more compatible with the human gut than cow cheese. But again, it's what you like really that's going to dictate whether you eat that or not. And of course, if you can or cannot tolerate it. Right, our next question. What should you sleep in? Nothing or pajamas? Again, personal choice. Most people generally will actually sleep better if they're in just underwear or naked. Reason for that is it helps keep them cooler. And most people will sleep better the cooler they are, not cold, but cooler. So if you're having difficulty sleeping or you get overly hot and you wear pajamas, then maybe try sleeping without them, because you'll likely find that you sleep a lot better. I slept naked pretty much my whole life, and it's only the past year that I haven't, because we now co-sleep with my daughter, who's now 13 months old. So she co-sleeps with us, and for that reason, I would just sleep in boxer shorts or boxer shorts and a t-shirt, depending how cold it is. But prior to that, I would sleep naked regardless. So yeah, it's your personal preference, really. Whatever you like. Let's see. Next question. Cool. Those particular ones are answered. Let's look at the other list. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I did a video. When was it? Back on the 24th of October. And I got a bunch. So it was about improving sleep quality and recovery through sleep and so on. And I got a whole bunch of questions all related to sleep and recovery. So this, I will try to do what we got, like roughly 7-8 minutes left. I will do as like a quick fire through all of these questions. They're all based around sleep and recovery from what I remember reading. So let's get it. I'll answer these as quickly as I can, but at the same time as clearly as I can. What do you think is the latest time to have a drink before bed? Tea, or dare I say coffee? So caffeinated drinks before bed. The latest I would recommend you have caffeine in the day is around midday for the average person. This is simply because of the half-life of caffeine. I have spoken about this in other videos before, but basically that means, let's say you have a cup of or a mug of coffee in the morning. It has 100 milligrams of of caffeine. 6 hours later, you're still going to have 50 grams of caffeine in the system. 6 hours after that, you're going to still have around 25 milligrams of caffeine. But the catch is most of us have multiple drinks. So let's say I've had started off with my 100 milligram. Now, 3 hours later, I have another mug for another 100 milligrams on top of that. Well, I've only so far lost about 25 milligrams. So I now have 175 milligrams in the body. Then, of course, if I go another small amount of time, 3 hours or say, and then another 100 on that. So you accumulate this massive load of caffeine. Then you get to bed in the evening, go to sleep, wake up feeling shit, exhausted, tired, and so on, because your system was overstimulated. So yes, you went to sleep, maybe even for an extended period of time, but the sleep you got was rarely of a good quality because of this overstimulation from the caffeine. So midday is the ideal time. At the very latest, if you're someone that can metabolize coffee pretty quickly, then maybe about 3 p.m. the very latest. But I would stop it as early as you can if you have to drink it. And yes, water is the recommended drink to drink. But for some people, again, be careful not to drink too late, because then you may end up waking up needing to go to the loo multiple times a night. So for some people, if, let's say, for example, you have a sleep time of around 10:30, you might want to stop drinking your water at around 8:30 in the evening. Give yourself that 2-hour window. And hopefully that way you'll be able to sleep through much easier than if you have water all the way up until your bedtime. Right, next question. Cleaning teeth just before bed or an hour before. Again, down to you as an individual. Doesn't make a huge difference. Again, it's more about how much that activity stimulates you, wakes you up. So if you're pretty tired and stuff, and then you go up to bed, you brush your teeth, now you can't get to sleep for 45 minutes, well, then perhaps you should have done it a little earlier. But I'd say if you know after dinner, like within around an hour after dinner, that you're not going to be eating anything else, then maybe get it done and out the way. I tend to brush mine just before bed. It doesn't seem to affect me. So that one I think is more of a personal thing, really. Should you sleep naked? I've already covered this. Yes, you can. Absolutely, I would recommend you do where possible, but that's not essential. So yeah, It depends on how well you sleep when covered, really. Sounds silly, but how hot should you be in bed? I wake up sometimes too hot. Cool. So this kind of goes back to wearing clothes and so on. But most people sleep in a room that is around 16 to 18 degrees in temperature. You can, of course, have it warmer. It feels cozy sometimes to fall asleep in that. But the warmer rooms or the warmer bed often will disrupt people's sleep, and they get less quality than they would in a room that is much cooler. So I would recommend keeping the room cooler if you can, and keep yourself a bit cooler. And that tends to lead to deeper, higher quality sleep and waking up feeling better, more restored, more recovered, and more re-energized. Sheets, what kind? Egyptian cotton. Yes, you can use Egyptian cotton. Basically, when it comes to bedding and sheets and stuff, I would just say as natural as possible. So things like cotton, bamboo, some people like silk, and things like that. So anything that's natural, try to avoid polyester, nylon and stuff, or keep the content to a minimum if you can. Some people sleep with that shit and don't even notice the difference, or at least they feel like they don't. They're like, I wasn't aware there was even a problem. Absolutely fine. Maybe that is the case. Maybe you're less responsive to it. But generally speaking, you spend so many hours wrapped up in it, I would recommend it's as natural as possible. So yeah, Egyptian cotton is a good option. Just make sure it's a good quality one. Pillows, what sort? Probably not memory foam, lol. So yeah, ideally not memory foam, mainly because of the toxicity that the foam tends to leach for over an extended period of time. So again, if you do have one, I'd wrap it in something natural that's made of cotton or something like that. But yes, generally speaking, in terms of from a health perspective, natural cotton pillows or down-filled pillows and things like that tend to be better for most people. Memory foam, I don't think you like it. Yeah, so we kind of just covered that. Should you be sleeping alongside someone? It depends if they gave you permission to or not, I suppose. That really doesn't matter too much. Again, would come down to you as an individual and comfort levels, safety, security, and things like that. I know what's more important really than whether I should or should not be sleeping next to somebody is the size of the bed that I'm sleeping in with that somebody. So I happen to have a super king size because I have this thing where personally, if I'm in a smaller bed, like if we ever stay away and it's just a normal double, I don't get my sleep is not as good or not as deep because I'm very conscious of turning over and affecting and disturbing the other person. So it's less about that person disturbing me and more about my own consciousness about disturbing them. So I think, again, this one would depend on you as an individual. Some people love sleeping with other people because they have a sense of safety and security, as I just mentioned. And others, they're like, nah, mate, I need the bed for me. I like to spread out, roll around, and so on. So yeah, again, there's not really a good or a bad argument. It just depends on what you prefer and what helps you to feel relaxed and safe and secure in bed. Next question. What should you be thinking or not think before going to bed? So in an ideal world, we would be focusing on more positive things, of course. Ideally, you don't watch the news late at night and shit like that. Generally, you wouldn't want to watch movies, shows, and programs that are overstimulative or overly negative. For example, we watched, what's the series called? Sons of Anarchy. When was it? A couple of years ago now. My brother kept going on, oh, this show is great, it's great. So my partner and I, we decided to watch it. And I'm not overly affected by these sorts of things because I don't get too emotionally wrapped up in the show and what's going on. My partner, however, she struggles not to. So we would finish an episode, and as always, as you know, with these shows, they leave them on a cliffhanger and all the rest of it. She'd like have this compulsion to want to know what's going to happen next, but would also be seriously stressed out and anxious about what was going on. And not because she really cared about the people, but it would just leave her in a heightened state of anxiety, stress, etc. And then she'd struggle to sleep if we were to ever watch it too late. It would just play on her mind and keep repeating, because if you've ever watched it, nothing good fucking happens to them. Like, everything they're trying to do is allegedly for good and to elicit a good outcome, but nothing goes right, nothing goes well. It's just negativity on top of negativity and so on. And it's not a bad show. It is just full of a lot of fucking drama, though. So yeah, less of that type of shit, really. Which is a little bit like in an ideal world, you don't watch the news or read the newspaper whilst eating, because again, it's all negative crap, negative energy, and it tends to affect and disrupt your ability to digest your food properly. So towards the evening, generally lighter hearted stuff, comedies and things like that, something that makes you feel good, and that will often help you to sleep better. Some people like to read, so I would generally say tend to read less technical books and things. So you're not really trying to learn and create new memories and things like that so much. Just read, storybooks, novels, and things like that. More of your fiction based stuff. And then our final question. So we're a minute or two over here, but our final question: should we have the windows open or vents on the windows open when we're in bed? Again, totally optional, but if it will help your room get to the ideal temperature, then yes. The other advantage is, of course, you get good clean air circulation, providing you're in a relatively clean area, that is. But for most areas, regardless of where you live, at nighttime, obviously, negative pollution and stuff will reduce because less traffic and things like that. So yeah, having a window open for most people, even though when you walk in the room, it might not feel so comfortable and be a bit chilly, overall, for most people, it will help them sleep better, get deeper, more quality restorative sleep, because it will help maintain the room at that ideal temperature. Just be careful, of course, during the depths of winter, when it gets real cold, to not let your room drop too cold, because the catch is, of course, if you're in a room that's too cold, well, now that's just as bad and disruptive for the sleep as a room that's too hot. So try and get that balance. Roughly sort of 16 to 18, 19 degrees tends to work best for most people. Right, cool. Well, that's a lot of questions answered in the last 47 minutes or so. If you have any, you better drop them in quick, because I'm literally about to go and have my dinner. And if not, save them up, drop them in the thread, the Ask Tyrone thread in the Facebook group for next week, and I will get them all answered then on our next session. As always, people, I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here. I hope the sort of the answers I was giving, even though a little bit shorter than normal, hope they were thorough enough for you to kind of move forward and take action now. And if not, let me know, and I will go deeper in the next session. Take it easy, people. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to chatting with you